You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Excited to talk to today's guest. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. Very excited to introduce a friend of mine, a colleague in the industry, Philippe Moreau. We met several years ago. You have several initiatives. You had several initiatives on the go. I know that the oldest one was with the Vizio care, but then that expanded to a portfolio. So Philippe is a president and a chief executive officer of MediProductions, digital communication company for veterinarians and animal health professionals. He graduated from the University of Liège and holds a DVM. So he's a fellow veterinarian, but also changed into the industry of technology. So joined the dark side of startups and entrepreneurship. So Philippe, what a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for finding the time.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. I've listened to several of your podcasts, and it was always interesting to listen to others. Now it's a little stressful that it is my turn to express my ideas and to share them with other colleagues in the profession. But I'm excited. Yeah.
Why don't you give us a little bit of background? What does MediProductions do, and how did you find yourself running this organization?
Well, before I talk about the company, I'd like to maybe introduce you why did I had the crazy idea of, start MediProductions, and then you probably get a feeling for it. I was in practice for 17 years. And when I was in practice, I realized that there was a huge gap in our training. A huge gap was the fact that we didn't really had any knowledge of how to communicate with clients, about marketing, about all the things that make a veterinary hospital, a veterinary clinic, a business, move smoothly. We were taught, and I think it's still the case, very well about medicine and surgery, but all the other aspects of our profession were ignored. And here we are in practice, and we're supposed to know. So to make the long story short, that's how my colleagues in the practice said, well, we need someone to be in charge of marketing, about client communication, human resource, all the things that we need to know and that we don't know. And, there was no volunteer, so I ended up, raising my hand. And that's how I started to get involved in other aspects of our profession on a daily basis. And then I got myself, educated. I followed some training. I went to the NAVC in Orlando many, many times, listening to the practice management gurus of the world. And then I came back and I started to apply certain things to my own clinic. And then suddenly, without knowing, I was applying things that were slightly different sometimes, that were similar in in many instances. And then, progressively, without knowing, people ask me, how do you do this and how do you do that? And I start to be myself on stage. And I became, without knowing again, a practice manager. And that's how I also started to have the idea of developing a company called MediProductions that would help veterinarians to find solutions, communication tools that will enhance client relationship at various stages of the client experience in the practice. That's how MediProduction was born 22 years ago. So that gives you an idea of why I developed the company and why it is still today a need, and I would say to a certain extent a success, because we have over 3,000 practitioners and veterinary clinics using our programs worldwide. So we started in France, we grew to the UK and then to other European countries, and then we crossed the pond and we opened a subsidiary in the United States. And so we're not that much present in the US today, but we still have a presence in about 600 to 700 practices in the United States and in Canada. So what do we do? What do MediProductions do? We started by creating communication tools that were slightly different than any others. And at the beginning, they were not that much digital, by the way. But we based all our services on content. So we started by having a graphic studio. And we started by digital signage. So in other words, putting TV screens in waiting rooms and reception. Nothing really that creative in terms of the concept, but the difference was the content. So we developed 3D animations, and we did a lot of animations in using our graphic designers that are 3D animators. So cartoons, if you prefer to use another terms. And then the technology of cartoons evolved, with like others, and we start creating what's called motion design, so other format of animations, but it was all based for digital signage. So in other words, the product that we had initially was called Vizio TV or Vet Kiosk at the time, and it was aiming at two things, entertaining during the waiting time, but also entertaining and generating what I would say awareness. So about the service that are given by the practice and by the veterinarian. So the idea of entertaining was essential because while the people are waiting, whether it is because they have an appointment or because they're just at the reception waiting for someone to take care of them, it was quite critical that the content was fun, otherwise people would not watch. So we really paid a lot of attention to the creativity and the quality of the content. And today, that product is still available, and it is in many, many practices. The principle is the same, but the technology has changed. So now we pilot the screens with internet. The vets can edit their own playlist. They can add their own content. There is multiple different new features associated with the program, but it was all based on content because a screen is easy, but it is essential that the people watch it. And if you put just simply a PowerPoint or I would say a modified PowerPoint, the likelihood of the people to watch it for a long time is very low. So you need to have something that is attractive and things that are moving, very, very few text, preferably no text, maybe just a background music if you put any sort of sound. But again, people today, I call that the YouTube generation. They don't read. So you need to have animations that talk for themselves with maybe a few words, a few lines of text, but something very different in terms of communication sort of format. So that was our first product, our first service. And then sometime in the past, I met with a marketing lady who worked in a corporate company at the time, and she said, you really should develop something that is within the consultation room, because we need to have your kind of content, but to explain clients how to and why to do this particular diagnosis test or why to perform this surgery. In other words, content that will help veterinarians to facilitate the client's decision. That's how we developed Vizio Consult. So that's how it was born. And we started about 10 years ago. And we launched in 2012, the first tablet version, and then we went to a web version after that. So we started to have our own IT department to develop the software that display the content at those various steps of the client experience. So we're no longer in the waiting room now, we are in the consultation room. So it's no longer passive, it's interactive. And the tool is to help clients to understand. And I hope that you share this with me, but once the client understands what needs to be done with their pets, the likelihood to say, yes, let's do it, is much, much higher, much higher. And then, of course, when they understand, it's also an additional benefit for the vet because he has provided a service that is not just a prescription, but is part of an education. And it adds value to the consultation. It adds value to the performance of the service that he's going to give him the next day or the day after. So Vizio Consult has evolved. And today we have a library of over 3,600 lines of content. We are present on the web, with a web version. This is the 6th generation of our software. We are now integrated also in a large number of practice management software, which allows also a better, access to the content. So this is a fantastic tool, and of course we're very proud, and it is used widely in 9 different languages, including Chinese and Japanese today. So that's the second product that really has boosted us to be who we are today. And then 4 or 5 years ago, we had another crazy idea to develop an app that we called My Buddy Pet app. It is not on the market yet in the US, but it is certainly present in France, in the UK, in Belgium. And we are planning to launch this particular service within the next few months in the United States and Canada. So I can tell you more about that particular app in a minute.
So Philippe, thanks so much for the background and the explanation. That's really great. But I did want to ask you one question on Vizio Care Consult. Can you walk us through an example of where a clinician would use that with the patient so that our audio audience can understand your visual product?
Sure. I encourage you to go on the website, by the way, because then you will see how it works visually, because this is a visual product. But I can, explain or try to do my best to explain. You are in a consultation with a client, and the traditional ways to explain are verbal. So you will explain to your client what is a cruciate ligament, or what is periodontal disease, or what is diabetes insipidus or diabetes mellitus, or whatever the condition might be. And in that case, you have the verbal way to explain. I said earlier that the people don't necessarily listen very long, whether it is at the physician or at the vet, so the impact may not be sufficient. So then you start using little drawings, and veterinarians will make a little drawing and explain on a little sketch what's happening. Or maybe some of them will use anatomical plastic model to explain what is the cruciate ligament or what is the heart and so on. So what we created through animations is that's not only the anatomy, but also various abnormal conditions that are animated that the vet can use, whether it is on a tablet or whether it is on the computer, on the screen, on your computer, that details. And those animations have no text, no sound. They are a visual aid. So the vet can talk over, and as he speaks, the animation is flowing. So it is a visual aid for himself to make sure that he explains all the things that need to be understood by the client. And those are very short. They're anywhere between a few seconds, sometimes 30 seconds. So you can jump from one to another depending on whoever is in front of you, and each client is different. And depending on the condition, the animal, the situation, depending also on the time that you have, you will use the menu in different ways, and you will actually explain, and then eventually from the app itself, whether it is the tablet or the web, then you can send the visual, the animations, or the fact sheets to the client directly on their email. And so now they have something that they can share at home with their family. And you may or may not know this, but 86% of the decisions that are taken when it comes to, health, whether it is for your children, for your pets, 86% of those decisions are taken at home. So by providing a service that not only you can use within the consultation, but then you can send to your client through an email in a very quick and easy 2-click, you actually enhance not only the quality of your service, but you also increase the chance of your clients saying, yes, let's do it. So I don't know if that's a clear explanation, but I gave you an example with the cruciate ligament, but I could have given multiple other examples where such an explanation is needed.
It sounds like there's about 3,000 of those examples in your guys' tool. Probably don't have the time to go through them all, so why don't we keep moving?
No?
So what's new in your company these days? What direction are you guys going in? What can you share about the future?
Yes, well, there's a lot of things that are new. First of all, we were recently acquired by a Japanese group called Kyoritsu Seiyaku. This happened 2 years ago. And the Japanese group gave us, I would say, resource that we never had before in terms of future development in the space we are in, which is, client relationship and digital tools. So as a result, we were able to accelerate some of the ideas that we had in terms of development, particularly when it comes down to certain apps, certain, smartphone apps. And this is the direction we're taking, in addition to the service that I explained to you. So we're working today at various concepts associated with, smartphone app for pet owners, some of which are related to walks, when you walk your dog. So the dog Strava of this world, we recently generated a joint venture with an app called Wolf Tracks. So that will be combined with the app that I mentioned to you earlier called My Buddy. So it will be something very innovative, because I believe very much that veterinarians should be on an app in the pocket of all their clients. But in order for an app to be successful, it has to be something that is used every day or almost every day. So in that instance, walking with your dog and or playing with your cat are things that happen almost every day, and a good reason to use the app, particularly if the app has also other features, including the medical record, the reminders, the booking, the appointments, ordering products, and so on and so forth. So we're very much into that space, and we're developing something that I think will be very exciting and that we plan to launch later this year in the United States.
Very interesting. I like what you said about the, educating the clients, because, with the average client seen once a year for what they say 15 minutes, then you can't sell everything you want to deliver information wise. So if you can deliver the content in any other ways when they're in that exam room, it really helps to explain a lot of concepts. So I really like that. I wanted to ask about the business aspect of it, because content business is difficult. And no matter how I looked at it, well, maybe it's difficult for me, and I take that as a potential. But, when you're developing a platform that has content that could be used in various ways, then your continuous production is new content, but it's not linear to your revenue, because your revenue is really selling it to other clinics, to, partnering with technology, but your direct cost of producing additional content is not correlating sort of, one-to-one with your product. I don't think, like, if I were to think about the like the digital app, you're kind of working on the features, customers demand features. Is it the same as sort of your content is almost like features in the software, or how do you decide we're going to invest into more content, because it's expensive, the 3D and design and all of that stuff, it's not cheap. So how is that
right.
sort of business mindset works behind the content platform?
It's ironical because you're a smart businessman, Ivan. So so I'm going to give you a tip. All right. First of all, you're right. Developing content is expensive because you have to have designers that are qualified, and then you have to build the anatomical model of the dog and anatomical model of the cat in 3D. But the idea behind it is to use the content in various ways. So once you have the content developed and the anatomical model, then it's a 3D object that you can use in various ways. And our concept is to use our content in various areas, but very often the content is not very much different. Let me give you a couple examples. We are in the waiting room, and we're going to use an animation that is there to entertain, but a variation of that animation may be the educational component of it, and that will end up into Vizio Consult. And then we create from that particular animation that is in Vizio Consult a fact sheet that has now text, but animations to illustrate the text. So now we use our content in a third type of model, in a third type of service, if you wish. And those fact sheets, they end up being in the app. So now we have fact sheets that are breed specific, such that when the client goes into the app that he has downloaded, he will have animations and fact sheets that are very, very original, that are completely aligned with the breed of his dog and or his cat. So that's the key, is to make sure that when you develop content, you know that you're going to be able to use it various stages of the client experience, such that you optimize your investment.
That's interesting. And so that takes iteration. That's not something that you come out of vet school and say, oh, let's produce the content that has various revenue streams and then just hire development teams. So what was the is that the strategy now that you evolved into, and you're like, okay, if we're developing this, then you have separate streams and you're always designing something that will be allocated that way? Or now it's just such a sort of rinse and repeat process that everything you create, you're like, okay, these are the 3 applications, how it will go towards that? Is that how it is?
Well, there is a bit of both, Ivan. Initially, we were not, looking at, what's going to happen in 15 years. So we developed content for 1 and then for 2. And then progressively, we realized just what you mentioned, that the cost was such that we really needed to optimize the content as much as we could. And of course, now we have that sort of attitude or that sort of thinking when we generate a new service or a new content? Is that something we're going to be able to use at various stages? So I don't know if that's the answer to your question, but I'm going to give you one more element. We started doing webinars because we start doing webinars that are really innovative. We started in France. We now have them in UK. We'll soon have them, in the United States and in Canada through the partnership we just signed up with the NAVC and Vetfolio. Now, what is different in our webinars? The content. The speakers are using our content to illustrate their medical and surgical topics. So again, we're using the same content, but in a different fashion. And again, this is a way to optimize our investment.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this will be different. There will be a sound, and it will be a speaker talking over, explaining a medical condition. So we're using something similar, but in another environment.
It's amazing. We're slowly but surely running out of time, but I guess I have a comment and then a question. My comment would be, what a great place to be. And after all of those years in content creation, when we've switched to this, work from home, ingest content on the screen world. So you must be experiencing some great success because of that. And with that, thanks for joining us. And we like to end every episode in the same way. So I've got a question for you, which is, in your career as a veterinarian in practice and now a tech entrepreneur, what's a book, a TED Talk, something that you've ingested that you found inspiring along your path to today?
Well, I'm going to give you two books that I like a lot. And I would not be surprised if you know both of them. But I manage a team that is there also to sell our services. And one of the books that I really like is the book from Daniel Pink called To Sell is Human, because I think it's a fantastic book, and it applies to veterinarians when they're on a daily type of journey, talking to their clients. So To Sell is Human is to me one of the reference. And the other book that I really like, and you're going to smile, is that I manage a small team. And I think that, when you are in an organization, whether it's a small one or a big one, you need to have a team that is able to work together, that is, enjoying meeting, whether it is virtually or in presence now, every day, and work as a true synergy type of team. And one of the books that I like very much is by Robert Sutton. I don't know if you know the book called The No Hassle Rule. So the No Hassle Rule is a fantastic book. And, if you work, in an environment where you need to create a team, you should read that book, because it teaches you a lot about how to create a fantastic atmosphere in terms of working together.
That's absolutely. That's one of the core values in Shawn's company, no assholes. So that's perfect. That's how they fired him from the company, because he's one.
Hey, don't start rumors on our show.
All right, Philippe, one more question. Do you know anybody in the industry that you think would be interested to interview here and that we should invite?
Oh, I know plenty. It's a tough question, because I don't know if you would accept to invite people other than, well, you did. I was going to say you invite someone from France, myself. So, but there's a couple individuals that I would really recommend you to invite. One is Julian Howell. He is the commercial director of Caris Animal Health. Julian is someone with a fantastic, vision of how the profession should move. And there's another one that I really recommend as well, and his name is Matt Dobbs. Matt is today, he's the founder of Vet Partners. It's a big corporate in the UK, and he sold it after a few years, and now he's a CEO he's the CEO of Destination Pets, who starts, in the United States. So when I talk to Matt, he has millions of ideas and always in great innovators. So those are two names that I would recommend.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. We want to invite you to join the Digital Veterinary Summit, which will take place virtually on 27th, 28th of July. The event brings together over 150 executives from the veterinary industry to examine the sector's digital trends and dynamics. and showcase the industry's most exciting emerging technologies.
If you are a digital veterinary innovator, you can apply for the Digital Technology Showcase and get a chance to introduce your product to the audience. My friend Ivan is on the selection committee. Please go check it out at thedigitalveterinarysummit.com.
If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinarynnovationpodcast.com. See you next